So, welcome to Prophetic Table Talk. We are very excited about being here tonight because it is such an awesome time to be alive with everything that is happening, to be in the middle of what God is doing. Um, and I also want to mention before we get into tonight, this past Thursday night, we did an interview with John Ramirez, and it has gotten lots of views. And we definitely want you to go back and watch it again because he gave so much information about what's going on behind the scenes, and not just what's going on behind the scenes as we look at the government, but how the occult fits into what's going on behind the scenes. So it's a huge understanding about that, and it's an eye-opening understanding. So, and I would also recommend his new book that he's got coming out because he's going to talk about it in his warfare series that's coming out. So anyway, it is still on the thread. If you want to go back and see that, we invite you to. So Connie, let's start an update on what's the latest news.
Well, I'm anxious to hear what Shane is going to say about our gold price. Because on the 26th, they're saying that day would be remembered as the day silver went certifiably insane. In just a few hours, the price of silver rocketed from $103 to an all-time high of $117, a staggering 14 gain. However, when we look at the price today, the price I have might have changed, but I've got gold at 47.33.80 and silver at 3.50. So, wow. You want to tell us what's going on?
Well, actually, this weekend, if you go back and watch the John Ramirez special, we went over that as well about silver. So for the people that did not catch that, I'll go over some of that again. Basically, it started Monday. What we had is some of the retail servers in New York started being ticked offline. And what that does is retail traders access the stock market and the exchange and the trades through these servers in order to be able to trade. And understand, a retail trader is anybody trading less than $1 billion. You're a retail trader. So unless you're one of the large management firms, you're on the retail servers. You don't have a specialized access straight in. So going from that standpoint, they started clicking some of the servers offline on Monday, more and more come on Tuesday, and then by Wednesday, basically everybody was offline. And it was strictly the big boys in there playing. Wednesday, the price of silver and gold just ran sideways and it was ticking from top to bottom tick. And what they were doing was just placing entry points in the gold and silver. And then we're talking about gold and silver at all-time highs when they're doing this. So they were positioning themselves perfectly between Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And when I say they, I'm talking about your BlackRock, your JP Morgans, your Fidelities, your big names were positioning themselves. And then Thursday and Friday, all of a sudden, they let all the retail traders back online. Oh, it was just a glitch in the servers. It's normal. It's happened in the past. We got them fixed. We're all on new servers. And what they did Thursday and Friday is they sold over on every one of the retail traders to the tune of trillions of dollars.
Wow.
And this is a twofold process. Number one, it's a money grab. First and foremost, absolutely, it's a money grab. Number two, it's because all of the call options that they have on gold and silver are coming due March the 1st. And if they can't pay those call options, which they can't, then they're going to have bailouts. And if they don't get a bailout, they're going belly up, period. That's how big these call options are. So going forward, they had to drop that price in order to be able to cover all of these calls. So part of what it was a money grab to be able to cover the costs, and then part of the secondary part is to get those prices down. So when those costs come to maturity, if they're not at that price level, they're not as valuable, and they don't have to pay as much, if any. Now, to let you know, kind of a scope, the price level that they needed in order to actually make this work for them is they need silver around $50 an ounce,
Wow.
or they start falling apart. They need gold. They actually need it below 4,600, but more like 3,800 in order to be able to keep from falling apart. But if silver and gold decide to drive up this week and into the 1st of March, then it's going to be really, really bad for them, because they're not going to be able to cover every one of the options out there. They basically have sold. They basically have sold the silver options 100 to 1. So the one option that they sold, of the 100 options they sold, they can only cover one, and the other 99 people they can't cover.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the reasoning. So everything you're seeing on price is pure manipulation. So you're just seeing the paper price. It's just all manipulation, period. So you have to back up and look at what are companies like Samsung, what are companies like Apple actually paying for an ounce of silver? And that's what you have to actually look at and go by. And currently, right now, they're paying between $98 and $128 an ounce of real value.
Mm-hmm.
So no matter what the paper price says, you have to look at the scope of what they're actually paying for it. And they're paying between $98 and $128 an ounce right now.
Wow.
And there is a lot of explanation on the John Ramirez interview. If anybody's interested in more information about this and how it's working and what's going to happen going into March 1, and even prayer points that John threw in to look for, that's a good interview to go watch.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Good. Well, were you going to say something else, Shane?
No, go right ahead. That's it.
Okay. I didn't want to interrupt you. Okay. So if you live in Virginia and you own a gun, it's possible what's taken place in Virginia. The Supreme Court Justice Committee actually advanced a slate of gun control bills targeting semi-automatic firearms, standard capacity magazines, carry rights, home storage, and more. And so what this means is there's a substitute bill, SB 749, which was adopted, which now bans all magazines above 10 rounds that are currently owned by law-abiding Virginians. And this could actually turn individuals into criminals for owning their handguns, any semi-automatic rifles they may have, any shotguns. So that's pretty significant if you're living in the state of Virginia. I don't know if that would fly in Texas, but Virginia, you could be a criminal for having a gun with over 10 rounds in your magazine. I don't know anything about that, but is that a lot of rounds in a magazine?
That is not a lot of rounds, but at the same time, it only takes one.
Huh.
So, but if you're looking at it from that standpoint, this is what Virginia voted for. They went blue. So what do you expect? They went blue. So this is the full expectation. I mean, you can spin right off of that and look at New York. Mandani is literally destroying New York out the door. So this is what happens when you go blue. It's not unexpected. It was completely, it was anticipated as far as that's concerned. The 10 rounds thing, most handguns come with a 7 or a 9 round clip anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So and there's no regulations on how many clips you can own. So you can have 40 clips with 9 rounds, and it only takes a split second to change clips. So it's not that big of a deal. It's just a show of force, and it's
Yeah.
just basically gerrymandering. It's pandering to their base, and it's just basically all it is. It has no relevance whatsoever, and whether or not 9 rounds versus 10 rounds or 10 rounds versus 11 rounds is going to kill more or less people.
Yeah. Well, Donald Trump has spoken with Governor Tim Walz, and the president said that the two actually seem to be on the same page in wanting to work together as it relates to immigration issues right there in Minnesota. And on the 26th, did you want to say something
No,
on
go
that,
ahead.
anybody? Okay. On the 26th, also, the homeland was under threat. Pentagon's new national defense strategy elevates domestic defense above all other missions, warning future wars may be fought directly on U.S. soil as adversaries gain strike capability.
I think that's every Southern redneck's dream come true. If that happens,
I agree.
I agree too.
if you're going to do that, please start in Florida and head north. If you actually make it to the Florida Georgia line, trust me, that's as far as you'll ever make it. But we don't. I think the cost sheet bet on that one would be less than a 1% probability that you would make it to the Florida Georgia line. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you got to
Wow.
look at the fear tactics in all of this, because there is fear tactics in putting things out like this. And I understand we do need warnings, and we do, need to know basically things like this ahead. But there is also the thing is that when I look this up, it has a lot to do with what domestic things are going on, from riots to everything else that's going on in our nation. So it's not just a warning of outside attacks, it's a warning of internally what's going on.
And we all know that when you're having conversations, your phone will pick up things and start putting things that you're desiring, you're talking about, you need or want. All those advertisements will come up on your phone. Well, actually, Google has admitted that they were secretly listening to your phone, and they have agreed to pay a $68 million lawsuit, claiming that, hey, we actually listen to people's private conversations through their phones. That's why you're seeing those advertisements come up.
Of course, and they've traced it all the way back to 2016, since Google has been listening to us, and it's probably even before that. So yes, that's why we're seeing it. They're listening to what we're doing. They're learning all about us.
And then Kash Patel announced that federal agents and international partners captured 6 individuals from the FBI's 10 most wanted list within the past year.
Which is good.
And
I looked up.
also,
Go ahead.
Go ahead. All right. And so Honduras has a new president, Nasri Asfora. He was sworn in. That's a Trump-backed businessman. Is this good for the Hondurans?
yes, this is really good for the Hondurans. He is an actual genuine person, and he really does have a heart for the people. He's probably the closest thing to a Nayib Bukele as Honduras could possibly get at this point. As far as, Nayib Bukele has a heart for his people. This man has a heart for his people as well. How much he can get done in comparison to Nayib, I'm not comparing that because I'm not sure, because he has a lot harder fight than Bukele had. There's a lot more opposition in his way than Bukele ever could have dreamed of. So, but as an individual, um, he is absolutely what they need. He is very, very genuine, and he genuinely loves his country and wants to see everybody prosper.
Good.
That's good.
Mm-hmm. Well, Attorney General Pam Bondi announced on the 27th a major legal victory after the 8th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals granted a full stay, overturning a Minnesota's judge injunction that restricted ICE operations. It's a lot going on over there. And then Donald Trump announced on Wednesday, the 28th, he nominated federal prosecutor Colin McDonald to serve in the newly formed role of Assistant Attorney General for Fraud Enforcement. Now he's currently serving as an Associate Deputy General at the Department of Justice. Do we know about him, Colin McDonald? Anybody? Okay. On the 28th, the S&P 500 SPX reached 7,000 for the first time in history, extending a rally that has pushed U.S. large cap stocks into a territory few investigators imagined decades ago, before subsequently pulling back.
Yeah, that's very common.
Any input on that?
Anytime you hit a new level in the markets that is unknown territory, all-time highs, or ATH as they call them, you're going to have an immediate pullback. And the reason you have immediate pullback is people are sitting there waiting for those specific levels to be hit. And funny enough, it creates an excitement, and then at the same time they play off the fear of where do we go from here. And so there's a ton of investors that actually short the market at those specific levels. So when you have all your sell orders and things like that come in, that's the reason for the pullback. Now, therein lies the 7,000. We're basically at 50,000 for the Dow Jones. This was previously unbelievable territory. A lot of this is based in the fact of inflation. We're seeing what the inflation does to the markets on the numbers, on the books. And it's not saying that, the S&P 500 is currently, valued at 7,000 is not because that's the actual value. Because if you take it back just about 5 years ago, 7,000 would have been to have that same dollar for dollar evaluation, that would have been a lot less. So technically, all we're doing is we're kind of catching up with inflation with the markets. Is all we're doing.
So the other things that's going on is that let me get my voice back here. So 1/30th is that President Donald Trump announced his nomination of Kevin Warsh, W-A-S-H, to serve as the chairman of the Board of Governors for the Federal Reserve. Shane, I'm going to throw that one to you immediately.
Okay, with Kevin Warsh coming in and being a part of the Federal Reserve as the appointee, it was kind of expected for him to come in. There were a couple of late names that came in the hat kind of toward the end, but Kevin Warsh was the expected one, and that's because he has more of a similar vision as Trump when it comes to interest rates and interest rates needing to be lower. So that was not a completely unexpected one. In fact, he was, I think, on Kalshi, he was running at 48 or 50% possibility. So higher than most of them as far as the appointees. I think this is going to be a good one for the market. I think this is, if we can get some interest rates down a little bit lower, that we can get some money moving in the markets versus everybody having to lock up their money in bonds. I think it'll be great. I think it'll be a really good thing. So the and in talking about that, I can go back and pick up the thing that Bitcoin we had the drop in silver and gold, but a lot of the drop that people forget about is the drop that we had in cryptocurrency simultaneously. And we're currently still dropping in silver and gold right now with the markets open, and we're currently still dropping right now cryptocurrency. This is what I've been telling you guys for the last 2 or 3 weeks now. They've got to they're trying to stop that steam engine from moving forward, because the faster that steam engine between silver, gold, and cryptocurrency moves forward, the less control that they have. So they are trying to get everything under control as much as they can. And we're talking about the people that currently run the economic system. We're talking about your Jerome Powells. We're talking about your International Reserve Chairmen. We're talking about Jamie Dimon. We're talking about the World Economic Forum, because if all of this runs 100% out of control and the U.S. has the hold on the market that it currently has, then Jamie Dimon's dream of a one world government goes away. Bill
And
Gates'
that's
dream
awesome.
of a one
Needs
world
to go
government
away.
goes away. So we do need a spike in the run, and we need it to run away from them. We need it to be so big that they can't handle it.
And that's true. And the intercessors that are watching needs to watch and pray into this. We do need it to get out of their hands so they cannot control it. And it's so important that we do this, intercessors.
Yes.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
yes. So Archbishop, and Connie, you can pick this up. Sarah, go ahead and pronounce her last name.
I would say Mulally. That would be my best guess. She was confirmed as the 106th Archbishop of Canterbury and the Church of England's first female to lead the Anglicans.
Okay. So the Anglican Church actually was birthed out of Catholicism, and it was kind of England's move away from Catholicism. But the thing that I found very interesting about this, with her being the first female, when King Henry VIII was in charge, he put the Archbishop to seat in what's called the House of Lords as a public spiritual influence over their parliament and over their government. So it's very interesting. They're going to have the first female sitting there.
Mm.
Right. And again, as y'all were talking, with this whole financial bit, we've got Bitcoin sinking as well. While the crypto market is plunging. Kind of already talked about that some, Shane.
Yeah, we got Bitcoin currently right now at 76,000. We got Ethereum at 2,259, and Solana is at exactly $100.
Wow. Okay. And so on the 30th, the government has entered a partial shutdown after Congress failed to meet a deadline of midnight to complete work on a spending package to prevent funding from running out across multiple federal departments. Are we still in this partial shutdown since the 30th?
As far as I know, we are. So I'm waiting to see how this is going to affect the markets, being a partial shutdown versus a full shutdown.
Yeah. Okay. And so President Trump has announced his nomination of Kevin Warsh to serve as chairman of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System.
Okay.
Seems like that might be a good move.
Yeah, it is. It is. We caught that one while your internet had went offline for a moment.
And let's see, House Administration Committee Chairman Brian Steele introduced the Make Elections Great Again, MEGA Act, as a sweeping proposal to set national baseline standards for federal elections. Now, this bill would make photo IDs for voting, your proof of citizenship for registration, your auditable paper ballot, and tighter rules around mail-in voting and ballot deadlines.
I've actually got no problem with that. I mean, for as long I've been voting for years, and where I vote in Mississippi, you've always had to show a photo ID, whether it was a driver's license or whether it was a passport. It didn't matter. You could
Whether
not
they
vote
knew you
without a
or
photo.
not, you still had to show it.
And it might have been your next door neighbor that lives literally that reaches in your window and borrows your sugar, that checks your photo ID, but you cannot vote until they see your photo ID.
That's right.
That's
And it's
right.
been that way. And that's just the way it is. And that's the way it should be, period. I got no problem with that.
Right. All right. And on the 30th, President Trump signed an executive order declaring a national emergency related to Cuba, citing security and foreign policy threats tied to the actions and alliance. Now, the order authorizes new tariffs on countries supplying oil to Cuba, aiming to cut off key economic lifelines.
Okay, go ahead.
All right.
Well, he's
FBI
not playing. Okay, he's not playing.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
FBI
Connie.
agents executed a court-authorized search warrant at the Fulton County election hub in Union City, Georgia. Now, this warrant authorizes the seizure of physical 2020 ballots, ballot images, voter rolls, related documentation, and potentially electronic devices such as phones and computers. Now, the FBI characterized the action as routine law enforcement activity tied to an ongoing investigation, offering limited public detail.
So this is a controversy, and this controversy needs to be looked at in depth, and Trump is right until we go back. It's just like a generational sin. Until we take care of the sin in the bloodline is going to continue. So as much fraud as we have had in our elections, if we don't go back and take care of it, and it may take us further back, that's fine. It may take us further back, but it's like a generational sin. Until you clean this up, it's going to keep coming back up, and Satan's going to find a place to find a way into it. And what do all good Christians do? They don't realize when Satan comes and probes in their generational line, and they just, I'm in the sin before I realize it. So somebody's going to find the way. Satan's going to watch how to get in if we don't close these doors.
Okay, and Senate Democrats are threatening to block a major Department of Homeland Security funding bill unless it includes sweeping restrictions on ICE enforcement, including a requirement for judicial warrants for all arrests.
Well, see, that is going to slow down the arrest. And I don't know what Shane is going to say about this, but it's already, if they have to go through all of this legal system, it's going to actually stop what ICE is doing. And it will then enhance the Democrats. The Democrats will have allowed the people to stay here that would pick up Democratic votes, and that's what they're wanting. It will keep high numbers in states that are blue states, and that's where they want to put these people, in blue states, because they would have more representation in Congress, which would take over with the blue states. It's all a ploy in the background, and they're coming at ICE. But actually, God put borders in place, and we're going to have to realize He's the one that said, I set nations and I put them in place. So we're going to have to learn to honor God's way of doing things with nation borderlines.
Well, I can tell you how this can be spun. Is Trump could take the opportunity to spin this. And one of the ways that he could do that, and I know there's many, but I'm going to give you my opinion on one of the ways he could do this. He could come in and say, okay, here's what we're going to do. If you're a nonviolent criminal, you're a criminal if you enter the borders, cross the borders illegally. At that point, you're a criminal. Period. You've committed a crime. But if you're not, if you have nonviolent, nothing on your record beyond that, beyond coming in here illegally, and you're nonviolent, and you have no criminal record beyond that, then give them a 6-month work visa. And they have to report in every 6 months to a caseworker. If they can prove that they're working, even if it's pushing a lawnmower from door to door, cutting everybody's grass, if they're working, they get in a 6-month extension. Then after 3 years, then give them a green card. If any point in time during that 3 years they commit any offense whatsoever, they're immediately deported. And that's all you have to do. And it spins it back on the Democrats at that point. It's like, hey, he gave us a path to citizenship. All you did was you just trying to keep us here and get us to do your bidding. He gave us a path to citizenship. And the path is we can work our way there. We can make money while we're here. We can send money back to our families that need it, and we can keep what we need to pay our bills and pay our taxes, and we can become a part of the society. In my opinion, that's the simplest way to handle it. And if it's a person that has been here and committed an offense since they've been here, they got to go, period. They get no options. They should not have to go through it. Should not have to go through a federal judge. It should not have to get any kind of warrant to arrest them or anything. If they have a record, they go, period. If they don't have a record, here's your path to citizenship.
And if you look at
It sounds
something
so
else
easy,
that
right?
It is that easy. That's the funny part. It actually is that easy. It's the fact that it is that easy is what makes it so aggravating. It is literally that easy.
And I'm also going to add, if they're coming to our country for our way of life, that is supposed to be a better way of life, if they're coming here for the better way of life, don't bring your stuff here. You come here and you learn the culture that you're coming. Don't take us to your culture. And that is what the Democrats are wanting them to do, is change our culture so they're in control. So basically, they need to speak English. They need to learn our school systems and how we teach in our school systems instead of us teaching to them. They need to learn our language and learn our social studies. They don't need to be here without learning our history if they're coming here to be a part of it.
That's right. Amen.
Mm-hmm. Because this is what Rome did. When Rome took over a country, they did not allow them to retain their own identity. When they became a part of Rome, they spent 2 years training them in Roman identity. Okay. This is where all of this idea of bringing and assimilating someone into your culture, it came from the Roman Empire. And they spent these 2 years making sure that whoever they conquered took on their culture and did not change the Roman culture. This is why Rome stood so long. And remember, Rome was never conquered. It just fell from within.
Yep.
Wow. Well, 2 days ago, Miss Melania, she had her movie released. So I don't know if anybody's gone to see that yet.
I haven't. I want to. Haven't had time, but I will.
This is interesting. On the 30th. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
They were going to. Was projected to make $7 million on the first night. I don't know if it reached the projection or not, but they have about 40 million in the project plus about 35 million in marketing it. So it's got a wow.
All right. Former CNN host Don Lemon has been arrested and charged after entering a Minnesota church and filming immigration enforcement protesters as they disrupted a service. Now, he did appear in court. However, he was released from custody, and he told the media outside that he was arrested for covering the news, adding he will not be silenced. Now, he was charged with conspiracy to deprive rights and interfering with religious freedoms by allegedly obstructing First Amendment rights by force. So he went into the city's church in St. Paul on January the 18th with protesters who said that one of the pastors was an immigration enforcement official. So he was arrested, but then he did get released. And then I think one thing that's very interesting yesterday, a newly released conglomeration of Epstein-related DOJ documents includes draft emails written by Jeffrey Epstein to himself in 2013 containing unverified allegations about Bill Gates. Now, the emails allege personal misconduct, including claims of illicit encounters and attempts to conceal them. The notes are self-authored, they're uncorroborated, and contain no direct communications from Gates. And they surfaced as part of a massive release exceeding 3 million pages. And I thought somewhere else, like 2,000 pictures and videos and stuff in addition to these 3 million pages. That's a lot.
True. It is a lot of pages, and some of this stuff says that Bill Gates and Russian women, no wonder his wife divorced him. I'm just saying, because it's in some of these documentations. It also, he mentions Elon Musk and Richard Branson and others. So there's a few other names besides Bill Gates in these papers.
And one other thing, we were talking about, immigrants coming to us and our language and everything. So Florida announced that actually beginning on February the 6th, all driver's license, knowledge, and skills exams were going to be administered in English. So no more catering to that. They have to take it in English.
That's real important, because if you have these people that can't speak our language or are driving trucks and so forth and cannot read our information, we don't need that on the highways.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't want me in their countries not knowing what was going on.
Yeah.
They wouldn't survive a roadblock, that's for sure.
Okay.
Okay. So the Hidden Economy TV YouTube, they dumped silver. And this is not a real market. So we have information about this, the silver market crashing, but I think we have been over that with Shane pretty in depth. And if not, we can go back to basically the interview with John Ramirez, and it will give you all of that update. Okay. Amanda Grace and Jay-Z and the Epstein files. This was released on 1/31/26. So this is huge breaking news and a prophetic alert. She says Jay-Z is taking a huge hit online after the new Epstein files released. He's allegedly shutting down his social media too. It says the Department of Justice released a news section of the Epstein files earlier today. This is the same thing that we've been talking about, but not only was Bill Gates mentioned in this, Beyonce's husband, Jay-Z, was reportedly present on the Epstein Island in 2019. Where else have they been? Okay. So it led her to a prophetic word that she released on September the 24th, 2024. And she said, the Spirit of the Lord says this day, this is the brink, says the Lord, of a purge that's about to bring the largest collapse in satanic music and empire ever seen. The cornerstones are being pulled out, and the chain gangs have been ordered from my courts to be cut in multiple areas to break agreement and solidarity to hide such hindereth dark deeds. So you can go to this prophetic word. She talks about the cauldron of their own making is about to be tipped over, and many will be swept up in this scandal. So these are accurate prophetic words, and I don't think we have seen the last of what we need to see exposed in the music industry and in Hollywood, because Hollywood has been a literal playground for the devil, and it's been a point of indoctrination of our youth. It's been a point of the sound, the music is indoctrinating us. Jay-Z, Beyonce, what they're releasing, and you may say, oh but I will tell you, they have been releasing, has been indoctrinating our youth. It's been planting things in the mind of our children and our own minds.
Yes.
Okay, so it's really got to be cleared up. Okay, so Sonia, Amanda Gray, this
She
is the
did
next
a
thing.
Okay, Amanda Grace, she recently, I don't have a date on this, but it was very recent. I watched this, as a matter of fact, Warning to the President. And she gave a prophetic warning when it comes to the administration and to President Trump. And she said, Mr. President, and this is her talking, it is crucial in this time that you be very careful about the agreements you make and documents you sign. There are some documents they're attempting to rush your signature on without you reading what is truly in it. This is a prophecy. Be careful what you agree to and what you sign, because it will open a door of destruction if you ignore the warnings. You must exercise extreme caution at this time. Be careful who you agree to meetings with at this time. And it goes on to say, she gives a scripture in Nehemiah 6 that says, talking about attempting to make meetings in order to ambush leaders that deem as a threat to their territories and their agendas. And in fact, Nehemiah 6:2 says, Sanballat and Gisham, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but sent word to me saying, come, let us meet together at Chimphirim in the plain of Anna. But they were planning to harm me. So President Trump needs to be very careful. And the reversible on 6:2 and 2:6, she talks about how we are in the year of 2026. It's a time of reversals between two blood moons, both marking Purim 2025 and 2026, having to do with agreements that were made that opened doors to the decrees of destruction that went out, that then the people of God had to humble themselves, pray, and seek the face of God for reversals, to go forth in the Spirit, to legally rectify those decrees of destruction in the natural. There are meetings right now being planned by world leaders. If President Trump agrees to them out of the pride and out of the flesh and ignores the spiritual warnings, signs of the ambush that's being planned, destruction is waiting at the door of those meetings. Destruction is waiting because pride goeth before destruction. Pride is the announcer of the destruction. And if this is taken out of pride, that announces the destruction to come. It's a very crucial time. And we, as intercessors, must intercede for him. And as the people of God, we must pray about this. So that's a
And that's
strong
really,
warning.
it is. It's very strong warning. It's very important because pride can be very subtle. I mean, you can get prideful about being in poverty. You can get prideful because you're in a struggle. We can be prideful in our own struggles and not let God into talking to us. You know, Nehemiah had to go consult God, and we'll say, well, I'm talking to God, but we can get prideful in here ourselves. And that's what she's warning. Okay. Sometimes what's in our heart talks to us and we call it God. And that's pride. So basically, and what I mean doesn't have to be something bad in your heart. It could be fear in your heart. It could be you felt rejected in your heart. You could feel misunderstood in your heart. And that can be talking to you over God's voice. And sometimes we call those things God's voice. So I'm not telling you to judge harshly when it says President Trump can get in pride, because every Christian is subject to pride, especially when we let our fears and our rejection speak over the voice of the Lord. and any other thing that we let speak over the voice of God. So it's a prayer point that he does not get even so busy that people are putting papers and documents for him to sign, and he's keeping up with so much that he's prideful that he can keep it under control, and it gets out of control. Anybody
Exactly.
want to?
Well, I think, she's just being so specific in this warning. The Lord is about, like you just said, the agreements and the documents, and they're eager for him to put a signature on it. And I hope and pray that he gets this prophecy, this word. Maybe if Eric watches her podcast, he will say, "Dad, you need to read this."
That's
But it's very interesting.
And that's
We need
right.
to
And
pray.
it's good to stay connected to prophetic voices that have proven themselves true, where you
Mm-hmm.
can get, Dad, hey, pay attention to this. She also, in the same prophetic word, she gives a warning that there has been alleged reports that the CCP may be connected to bankrolling some of the Minneapolis agitating groups through a dark money network. That is a huge prayer point because, we're talking about the threats are not just external, the threats are internal. Okay. And that's what they're warning us is going on in our country is much of the internal things. And Minneapolis is definitely a city that God is showing what is there. But how many more cities are there to show what's really there? Or towns? Go down to your local
Mm-hmm.
towns and see what's really there.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
Amanda Grace goes on to give a prophetic alert. She says a revolt is rising and there's threats of shutdowns, which we've talked about that on 1:30. For 24 hours after the lottery, the city remains suspiciously quiet, but rioting began on the early morning of Monday, July the 13th, while thousands of white workers, mainly Irish and Irish Americans, started attacking military and government buildings and became violent only towards people who tried to stop them, including the insufficient number of policemen and soldiers and city leaders initially mustered to oppose them. So what is she talking about? July the 13th was the date they attempted to assassinate President Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania. This was
Mm-hmm.
not a random date, is what she's pointing out. Okay. President, let's see, this was not a random date. It had blood tied to it from riots in New York City, where Trump Tower now resides. So basically, um, she is pointing out in intercessors, this is something you just need to go back and look at, that on July the 13th, there was riots that had taken place in our nation before this. There was blood that the enemy could go pull on that was released in the land. And that is something that we might not think of. The riot that she's referring to took place on July the 13th, 1863. Is called the New York Draft Riots that erupted over immigration. Isn't that interesting? And this is
Mm-hmm.
when they started doing immigration laws again. And also, she points out that Trump Towers in New York City, the ground that is on is tied to bloodshed and revolt. Okay. So basically, she's also telling you, intercessors, that the enemy is going to look for dates like this. He just doesn't do things randomly. Um, Robin Bullock has pointed this out many times. He does not do things randomly. He picks dates that he can pull from bloodshed or historical events. He can't just go pick a date. He's not a creator. He can't
That's right.
create anything. So he has to go back historically to bring these things about. There's several more things that she has in this word. And she talks about in the midst of the USS Abraham Lincoln that's been deployed to the Middle East. Of all the names, it has Abraham Lincoln's on it, tied to the Civil War, tied to national nations, the nation, splitting. So, of all the names, what about it? Abraham Lincoln. She says, it's not an accident, okay, that it just happens to be that one that they sent. So, what all did Abraham Lincoln face? Well, he faced media and political sabotage, riots, and there was other things about problems in the country when he was president. So again, we have this spirit that has arisen with adding things together. So basically, Sonia, if you want to pick that one up on the next page where she starts talking about how the Copperheads were connected to the Civil War.
Okay. Okay. You talking about on this where it says now if you look at Lincoln, he faced a war over immigrants. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, that's exactly
Okay.
right. Yeah.
Except there were slaves. The Civil War was over people that were brought to the United States from another continent, from other nations, and the South knew that freeing them, economic structure would collapse, and all that forced labor they would lose, and financially it would be catastrophic to the South. These individuals brought here and forced here from other nations were pawns in a political game of thrones. So the Civil War, one of the roots of it was fighting over immigrants. The most notable instance of civil unrest was the New York City draft riots in July 1863. These riots were fueled by anger over the draft and racial tensions, leading to violent clashes. Many Copperheads had and other dissenters expressed their opposition to Lincoln's administration through protest and public speeches. Legislative challenges. Lincoln's administration also faced challenges from Congress. Some members opposed his wartime measures, including the suspension of habeas corpus and the imposition of a draft. Critics argued that these actions infringed upon civil liberties. When the Civil War broke out in 1861, there was even talk of New York seceding from the Union itself, so entwined were the city's business interests with the Confederate States. New York City was intertwined with rogue leadership. Same goes for now with Zorro Mandano. I don't know if I'm Danino, whoever that dude, that guy, and y'all know who I'm talking about in New York. And as the war progressed, New York's anti-war politicians and newspaper kept warning its working class white citizens, many of them Irish or German immigrants, and that emancipation would mean their replacements in the labor force by thousands of freed enslaved people in the South. Now, this is where this is going to get real interesting. Riots began. Let me go back up here and read this last part because I did not read that. Riots over the draft occurred in other cities, including Detroit and Boston, but nowhere as badly as in New York. So New York was ground zero for the conspiracy. Anti-war newspapers published attacks on the new draft law, fueling the mounting anger of white workers leading up to the city's first draft lottery on July 11th, 1863. And this is where she's talking about it gets really interesting. The riots began. If we look at Minneapolis right now, look at the No Keys protest planned for March 28th. They are attempting to bring back these riots that occurred with Lincoln under a similar temperature we find our country in, and war was beginning over immigrants. While these riots occurred July the 13th, they attempted to assassinate President Trump on July the 13th. Our 250th anniversary in this is this July 2026, and the USS Abraham Lincoln, of all ships, of all carriers, is the one chosen to deploy to the Middle East on the Iranian government while the Iranian government is collapsing. Something is happening, and there is a timeline attempted to form here to make the conditions similar in the spirit and the natural to Lincoln. So set up the same parameters for an attempt against President Trump and Marco Rubio. Absalom and Abraham both start with AB and end with an M. David did not put the Absalom conspiracy down before it grew, and Lincoln did the same. He did not put the conspiracy down quick enough. Now we see
That's right.
revolt in the nation that the spirit of Absalom, that call Absalom gave, that if he were the leader, he would give justice to the nation.
Yes, and this is so important because if you actually do a history into the city of New York, not only was New York in the middle of all of these riots during the Civil War and the dissension that happened there, New York fought becoming a part of America from the beginning. The governor of New York, as well as the mayor of the city of New York, would not work with George Washington. They worked against George Washington. They worked against the American Revolution. That is historically documented. You can find many books on the conspiracies that were done against George Washington. So what you've got in the ground and in the land of New York is, and this is what the enemy keeps connecting into, he's connecting where they push back on becoming a part of America. Okay. And basically it began there. So what she's talking about is very, very important. We think all the North was together. No, they were divided over Lincoln, and New York was ground zero for the division of the Union Army staying together. In fact, if you do historical research, the North was losing the war until 1863. And that's the first thing that gave some life into it was the Emancipation Proclamation. But if you study that document, it was only if the North won the war were the slaves emancipated. It never freed the slaves. It was only if the North won. Okay. The other thing is that Lincoln had to change leadership of the Union Army, and he did not choose Grant at first. He did not want Grant because Grant was known as the butcher, and he lived his role as the butcher when he did put him over because the North wound up losing more of their men than the South. So it brings about this Absalom spirit, and this is what was happening, and this is what she's warning about again, because Absalom says, I can do it better.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I've got a better plan. I've got a better way. I can do it better than the leader. Okay. And this Absalom spirit will come about and start making suggestions. And once you see an Absalom spirit come about, folks, you'll not only see it in the nation, it'll dwindle down to the church, it'll dwindle down to cities, it'll come about, and it won't just stay in one place. You'll have Absaloms rising up. Does anybody want to add to that?
Well, I just think it's interesting that you're talking about back even then about it being called the ground zero.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about when 9/11 happened and the Twin Towers were hit, they called that ground zero.
That's right.
They sure did. And I don't know why. I don't know why I'm seeing this, but prophetically, I'm just seeing. Not. I don't know that it's prophetic. I'm just seeing something. I think it's ironic that they put the Statue of Liberty where they did. I don't know how that ties into all this history and everything, but yeah, the ground zero thing really jumped out at me about that.
It is interesting. So do some history. When you start seeing riots come up, just don't think they suddenly happen by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Start looking for the bloodshed, and the occult has to have that to tie into that. Okay.
Yeah.
So Connie, you want to do both Paul and Carol and Dennis watch these few dates?
So this podcast was done on the 28th. And they were saying, watch the next few days. So we've got a few more days in this time span. They started out, Bo Polney had gotten some revelation from the Lord that Simeon, the prophet, Jesus was presented at the temple 40 days from his birth. Okay, so if the birth was December the 21st, which, 40 days from his birth, if you want a very important date to write down, it was January the 30th. It was this past Friday. So if you add 40 days to the 25th of Christmas, it takes you to February 3rd. So between this past Friday and this coming Tuesday, he's saying pay real close attention to what's going to happen with silver. Now, we've seen what's happened thus far, but he goes back to Carolyn Dennis's prophecy where she said silver was going to explode with a volcanic eruption, which we really have not seen yet. We've seen it go high, but not the explosion that they keep forecasting. So with silver being at $100, which is not today, he said that's really nothing. It hasn't exploded yet. So January the 30th is very important because that's when Jesus was taken to the temple and he's held up. Simeon declares him Christ Jesus. He declares him as the Messiah. And so we have, just a couple of more days to look and see what's going to happen with silver. And he did make mention of something else as far as timing goes. He said, I'm sure we all remember the death of Charlie Kirk, the turning point, the field that he got assassinated on. Now, what Bo Polney has done is lay the menorah over the map, how it was laid out, where Charlie Kirk was, where he was standing, and all of that on the field that he was on. And so when he overlaid that, he talks about how the field that he got assassinated on was really in the servant candle position. And so when they shot Charlie, the shooter was at 142 yards. And he said, now, why am I saying that slowly? One, because from the death of the Pope, which was April the 21st, that was that 4-2-1 pattern, 142 days later was the assassination of Charlie Kirk to the exact day from the day of the death of the Pope. So he thought that was very interesting that it was 142 days, but also if all of this information were accurate, then the shooter was at 142 yards away. So from the death of the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the turning point, you must add 140 days and you land on January the 30th, which just passed. So he said it's just an amazing thing to tie it in directly with the presentation of Jesus in the temple 40 days from December the 21st to the exact day. So
Wow.
again, we're looking for, through the 3rd to see if there might be a silver explosion.
Now, what do you think about that, Shane? Do you think they're going to let it explode? Is it going to get away from them, or are they going to hold it? I don't know if he heard me to answer me.
Yeah, actually, as of right now, I'm sitting on the sidelines and I'm looking at a lot of historical data related to silver. Anytime we've had this large of a drop historically on silver, it's always been a continuation a little bit lower the following week. So basically, we're only talking about Tuesday. So if we have our explosion on the 3rd that we're talking about here, then we're talking about a huge jump up compared to where it is now. That would be literally larger than the drop that we just had. So you're talking about what's called a retracement. And it's not unusual to see a retracement like that. I mean, we see it every day in the NASDAQ. We see it every day in the Dow Jones. But to see a retracement of this amount on a commodity, that would be historic. And yeah, I would love to see it.
I would love to see it too. I would love to
Mhm.
see them lose control. Well, meaning the bankers. Anybody want to add to that?
That would be a significant drop because we're back down to 85. So that's a significant jump.
Actually, 77 as we speak.
Whoa. Wow. So what I'm
That's
hearing, all of these silver, well, not just specific to, well, more or less, I'm hearing a lot of chatter from people that I've listened to talking about don't panic, and don't go run out and try to sell your silver because you think, oh my gosh, it's going to go back down to who knows what. They're just saying, hold on, don't panic, it's going back up. And this is everybody across the board that I have heard that know what they're talking about in that particular, field.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that as well. It's going to go back up. It's got to. I mean, supply and demand forces the price to go back up. So just based off of supply and demand alone, the price has to go back up.
Mhm.
But during the meantime, we are also talking about the paper price, the actual paper traded price. So with that thought in process, that paper traded price can be manipulated, whereas the actual tangible product can't. So paper traded price, I expect it to go back up. Yes. Let's see. We ended roughly at 83. We're already down to 77. So what did I say when we were on with John Ramirez? Probably another 20% drop before we
That's
actually
right.
have a continuation back up. And 83 to 77. So we're 8% of that 20% drop's already been covered just since we started the program.
Wow.
So
That's right. Well, okay, so while we're talking about this, we have one more. It's an interview, and I'll sum up this interview. It's with Clayton and Natalie Morris and Dane Wigington. Now, this is a good thing to talk about at this time because the South has been in this deep freeze, okay? And long deep freeze for the South, okay? Because we usually, have a cold day and a hot day, and then sometimes we have all seasons in one day. But for us to stay in freezing all the time, you think we're in another part of the world. And I know people said the earth is tilted this way and that way, but they were talking to Dane Wigington, and you can look up his information. He's a lead researcher and a geoengineer, okay, about the weather and the allegations. He claims that the winter storms are geoengineered. Okay, he has a discussion with Natalie and Clayton about NATO being involved in climate manipulation, and he says that Iran has allegedly suffered for 40 years, not 40 days, 40 years of precipitation suppression. So basically, he says through the weather manipulation Iran is doing without the water they're supposed to have. And it's through the use of HAARP, HAARP, which is an ionosphere heater. It heats up the ionosphere, and it uses chemicals and other things to see the ionosphere. So the weather control is framed by this conversation as a weapon of war. And it was used in the Vietnam War, and that's actually documented, okay? And it's a tool to destabilize people. It's a tool to destabilize economies. So it has been a tool for warfare and to destabilize. And basically, the cover up is they just blame it on nature. The warming climate, or I guess we have a cooling climate now. I know the climate was supposed to be warming. Now we're cooling, okay? So the weather, the food, and the water are all being weaponized according to what Dane Wigington was explaining on this show. So basically, if you go back and you look at everything we've been talking about and you bring these times together, we've talked about the past with looking at the past, we've talked about the present, and who do they want? Somebody to rise up and say, hey, I can solve this. So that might be the Absalom rising up. So be careful. So basically, what does weather warfare mean? Okay, it refers to the internal modification of the atmosphere, ionic sphere, and the climate process. What does that mean? To disrupt agriculture, water supply, or even affect the morals of the people. Now, that's interesting. He says it goes all the way into our moral standards. Well, interesting when the weather's manipulated to create challenges as floods, droughts, extreme cold or heat. So it puts people in these challenges that they have to deal with, to influence population through instability. So if we don't have the normal cycles of nature for our food, for even our homes to be secure, different things like that, it creates an instability. And it's to gain strategic advantage without weapons. It is a weapon, but it's to gain advantage over the population and the population of people without weapons. So basically, weather modification is not climate change, and weather modification is not weather prediction. It's all about regional manipulation, not global climate modeling. So it's about manipulating the weather to gain control over the people. It's about a control source, and it's about getting into our psyche, so to speak, when it starts manipulating.
Mhm.
Yeah, I looked up some things on my own that's not in this report. And basically, Operation Popeye has been fully declassified. It took place in 1967 through 1972. It was conducted by the U.S. military during the Vietnam War. Its purpose was to extend the monsoon season in Vietnam, to flood their roads and disrupt their supply lines. The method was cloud seeding. Okay, what was the motto? Make mud, not war. So that's what Operation Popeye was about, making mud and not war. The outcome was the military acknowledged weather modification as a viable weapon. Isn't that amazing? They called it viable. Okay, so that led to something in 1977 called the ENMOD, ENMOD Treaty. Now, it was signed by the United States, the USSR, and many other countries. It banned hostile environmental modification, but it allowed peaceful research of weather modification. It allowed weather modification for civilian purposes, and it had no really strong way of enforcing the treaty. The key takeaway is the treaty exists because the weather warfare had already happened. So this treaty was signed by our country with several other countries that said weather modification could be done for civilian purposes. You mean civilian is making it as cold as it is in the South? I don't know about that. So, I know. So HARP, high frequency active aerial research program, was funded by the U.S. Air Force and the U.S. Navy. I think that is very interesting. Both the Air Force and the Navy has funded HARP, okay? So it basically studies the ionosphere. The official purpose of studying it was for communication, navigation, and missile detection. Okay, but they found that the ionic sphere heating could influence the jet stream and the pressure systems indirectly. Okay, so in their studies, they have done things by about cloud seeding. And so this has been proven that the United States, China, Russia, the United Arab Emirates, and Israel has all done cloud seeding to produce rainfall and to reduce rainfall and to bring about storms or either suppress storms before events. China has openly admitted weather modification for food security and national stability. And they have plans already developed to control the weather for over 1 million square miles. This is from China now. This sounds interesting, okay? So people are alarmed now. Patterns rising concern. Anyway, what is it? Extreme cold, historical norms happening all the time, okay? So basically, it is destabilizing things like food and water. Okay. It destroys crops and destabilizes governments. Okay. It brings about cold snaps and a need for more energy. I wonder about that. Okay. And when we need more energy, the prices go up for energy. How about that? So, some things have been proven. A lot of things have not been proven with weather modification. But basically, Job 38 says God's supposed to control the weather. Okay. Amos 4:7 talks about God withholding rain from a city, okay, and giving the rain to another city. And Psalms 135 talks about God bringing the wind from his treasury. So apparently we're messing with God's stuff instead of man's stuff when we modify the weather. So the Bible clearly puts the weather into God's hands and out of man's hands. So basically, the weather manipulation, what I would describe it as the Tower of Babel mindset. Let us take control for ourselves, what God can do. Let us make ourselves like God and let us control what God is supposed to be controlling. So that's something to look at deeply and is something that has already been proven because there's a treaty regulating it. Anybody want to add to that?
I do want to read one little paragraph that Dane indicated. He said it's warmer in Greenland than parts of the United States right now. Listen to this. Those who print the money from behind the curtain are the ones pulling the strings. This is certainly DOD involved completely. We know private defense contractors, Raytheon, are neck deep in this because Raytheon, Lockheed Martin do all the weather modeling for the nation's weathermen. Why would we need private defense contractors to do the modeling for the nation's weathermen that, oh, by the way, have illegal federal gag orders on them? What will it take? My question is, what will it take to wake the American population up to get them past their program denial, understand that they are victims of constant chemical weather warfare right now more than ever before, and that material is toxic. But he did say that what we see from this administration is the most aggressive doubling down on denial and cover up yet.
Interesting. Wow. So this is really something that we need to bring it out of conspiracy theory, whatever conspiracy theory is. Remember, conspiracy theory was developed in the 60s after Kennedy's assassination, where things were labeled conspiracy theory. So we need to bring it out of conspiracy theory and take a hard look at what we need to do in prayer, and even as talking to senators and representatives about this has got to be regulated. It's got to be something done about it. and don't, because I don't know what all this cold weather is going to do to the planting seasons, the growing seasons, and all of the above. Too much rain or not enough rain. Yes? So, Sonia, you want to kind of bring all this together on what you've heard tonight?
Oh my goodness, we've gone from Bitcoin to silver to the elements of the earth, the weather. How do I bring this together? There's so many things that were said tonight with prayer points that need, just like the weather, that's a prayer point. Praying for President Trump, making the right decisions, not signing documents, not getting into pride. That's a prayer point. There's so many prayer points within this uh, prophetic table talk tonight that those that are listening, I just want to encourage you to, if you didn't take notes, to go back, because there's just so much in here on this that we need to be praying about. We need to be praying about the silver. We need to be praying about the weather. We need to be praying about President Trump. And Lord, what else? And the elections, the about the ID ballots. Not ID. Show your ID for the elections that are coming up for midterm. Just a lot of things. And if I had to say one thing about this, is the whirlwind. This is like a whirlwind that we're in, and God is in control. God is in the midst of the chaos that's going on in our nation. He showed us that this morning at church, and we have got to go operate from the third heaven, not the second
That's
heaven,
true.
and see things from God's perspective and not what's being put out in media. And we need to know what the enemy's doing, but we got to know what God's doing in the midst of all this, because he's the ultimate one that has all control over everything and can stop it. But he needs us. He needs our voice. He needs our prayers. He needs our declarations. And so I just want to encourage all the intercessors. And even if you're not an intercessor, you're just, we're all called to intercede. But if you can just pray and pray for one specific thing, or make you a list, go back and listen to this again and take some notes, and pray for whatever God puts on your heart.
That's good. You want to add anything financially, Shane?
Well, financially is point blank. Don't run and sell your silver and gold just because you see it dropping. Hold on to it. As it's continuing to drop as well. While we're speaking, we're already down to $75 now. So, but don't run and sell, because remember, this is a manipulated market, um, and at the same time, look at the cryptocurrency, just like Sonia just mentioned, everything all the way to cryptocurrency. We have a thing that's trying to get through Congress right now called the Clarity Act. And the Clarity Act, if it passes through, is going to take more power away from the banks. So we have a lot going on financially, and even though it might look on the paper, it might not look like we think it should sometimes. Understand the real value of what's actually happening behind the scenes, and do the investigation and make sure that that is brought to light as well.
That's good. Okay, so let's look, and I will add this. Someone has posted that the documentary about Melania made 8.1 million for the first weekend, so she's off to a very good start. That's a good thing. So if you'll bring up what we've got at Global Vision Faith Center going on this week, Shane, I'd appreciate that. And we'll show this. Tomorrow night we have conquer the Gorgashite spirit. Now, this is the second group of giants that Israel had to face when they entered the promised land. The first group were the Hittites, where you had to deal with your fear. This is the second group. This is where you have to deal with the sins of the flesh. So, how your flesh interferes with your decision making. Break ungodly emotional covenants. Okay. Restore spiritual traction and forward movement, and establish healthy souled boundaries. Okay. All of this was something that Israel had to face in order to not just enter the promised land, but to live the promise. And that is so very important for us. So that starts tomorrow night. You can register if you're interested at globalvisionfc.com under events, and you'll find a tab to register there. So anybody got anything else they want to add? No? So thank you for watching. We appreciate all the interaction, the talk. We enjoy that. Leave us a thumbs up. Leave your comments. We're always interested in comments during the week, and we'll see you next week on Prophetic Table Talk.
Shalom, everybody. Good night.